few little housekeeping things for you. If you wouldn't mind to stay on mute just to cut down any background noise, but please know we want to hear from you. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat. We'll either respond to those in the moment, or our goal is to respond to those live at the very end. That way we can really hear from you and follow up to any questions you might have. Also, today's session is being recorded, and we will share the recording with Raquel as well as this entire slide deck with you so you can look through it, because we encourage you to stay on to the end because we have a really special offer for you at the very end. So now on to our speaker. Dr. Carlos Grijalva is an emeritus professor of psychology and neuroscience and former associate dean of the graduate division at UCLA. In his role as associate dean, Dr. Grijalva was responsible for graduate diversity programs and oversaw the graduate division offices of diversity, inclusion, and admission, and fellowships and financial services. He also served in a variety of administrative positions, including associate dean in the Division of Honors and Undergraduate Programs in the College of Letters and Science, and interim chair of the Cesar Chavez Center for Interdisciplinary Instruction in Chicana and Chicano Studies. We are more than proud to have Dr. Grijalva as one of ETS's graduate education advisors. We're excited he's here today. We hope you are too. Carlos, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Don, and thank you so much for attending today. We are so delighted that you've joined us to talk about the graduate school admissions process. I have to confess, when I was graduating from the University of Arizona, graduate school was an afterthought. I didn't think about it, but then I realized I was probably going to have to get a job. And so I thought, well, I like school. And so I wish I would have been able to attend a session like this that really kind of takes the mystery out of the application process, because I would have done things so much differently than I did back then. But in either case, we are so happy to be here. The graduate education advisors at ETS, of which I'm one of them, developed this webinar to help you reach your goals. One of the things I want to say is that graduate school is different from undergraduate school, as you might imagine. In undergraduate school, you're there primarily to acquire new knowledge and skills, whereas in graduate school, and particularly PhD programs, the goal is to create or expand on knowledge that is already there. So what we really need to be thinking about, as my colleague Maureen Grasso says, you need to convince the admissions committees that you have the skills and the drive to be successful in and create to the success of their program. So it's not only your success, but it's their success. So we're going to be talking about things that you should know about applying to graduate school. The key here is to be knowledgeable, to be informed, and to be well prepared. So as you can see from the agenda, we're going to be talking about the application and the admissions process. We're going to be talking about what makes a strong application in terms of the elements that go into it. We will spend some time talking about the interview, which is becoming more important. And now in today's world, where we are doing more virtual interviewing than in-person interviewing, or a combination of the two, that's become a real important tool in terms of the admissions process. We'll also talk about financial considerations and then closing the deal. So let's move on to the application and the admissions process. There are three very important things to know about the admissions process, the application process, that is. Most of the applications to most schools have two major components that you need to submit, probably as an upload. One of them would be the graduate school portion, and then the other is the department application itself. Now, some departments have supplemental items that they're going to ask you to provide, so make sure that you know exactly what they need. The second important thing is that applications are not reviewed until every section is complete. So you can't send things in piecemeal. You really have to kind of lay out the foundation of your application, get it completed, and then submit the complete package, both portions to the graduate school and portions to the department itself. And then finally, the real critical thing is to really attend to detail. Make sure that you know exactly what they're asking you to provide, know exactly where to submit that information, and on and on. Most programs do have an application fee. and they may vary from $75 and up. However, many programs also provide free fee waivers or reduced fees, oftentimes for individuals who demonstrate financial need by providing a FAFSA student aid report, or in other cases, probably very similar to yourselves, where you're participating in programs that are directed at underserved or disadvantaged groups. And this includes things like the McNair program, the MARC program, Ellis AMP, SOCNAS, and others. So make sure that you look for information that might provide you with certain fee waivers in the application to those particular departments. We know that admission to graduate school is competitive, and programs oftentimes have limited spaces for an application pool that can be very large. So for example, if you're applying to UCLA's clinical program, they may have only a handful of positions to fill, and they will have hundreds of applicants. So they have to make sure that they can actually reduce the size of that pool to the kinds of students that they want to fill those spots. And here's where faculty come in a very important way. They're going to be selecting who it is that are going to fill those spots. So I'm going to mention right up front now, and I'll mention it again later on. It's very important for you to get familiar with the programs you're applying to. Make sure you check out who the faculty are that are in those programs. And if you're really serious about applying to them, try to contact a couple of the key faculty that you think you would like to work with, because when the time comes, if they know you somewhat, and faculty are now sitting down to discuss the applicants, faculty will bring up students that they've either met or they've gotten to know, and those students are going to get more attention in terms of the review process than those students that have not made that contact. Again, also the case is that in most programs, and certainly PhD programs, they want to fund the students that they admit. And we know
Carlos, sir, we have lost your hearing you, the ability to hear you. Thanks for being patient, everyone. You know, technical problems just arise sometimes.
We'll give that a try. Can you hear me now?
There you are. Yes,
Okay.
sir. We can hear you.
I've got two mics set up, and I don't know why it's been working great, but things kind of finicky. So
It happens. We'll let you know.
where we lost connection, but I would just go ahead and continue from this point. The thing is that graduate schools are competitive. They have large number of applicants for a limited number of spaces. And so it's really key that you got to get to know some of the faculty that are in those programs, because they can then vouch for you if they've met you. Another limiting factor is funding. So even though there may be a fantastic pool of applicants, many programs are going to be limited by the number of students that they can fund. So this is the kind of thing that you want to keep in mind. So when you're looking at application processes and what it is that faculty are considering, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to look at your academic background. They're probably going to look at your transcripts first. So they want to understand whether you're academically prepared by looking at your grades, your courses, your GRE scores. Some of them are also going to be considering the reputation of the undergraduate institution. They're going to be looking at who writes the letters of recommendation and what the letters either say or don't say. You're going to be very interested in the areas of research that you indicate in your statements of purpose and personal statement. They're looking for a fit. They want to make sure that the students that they're choosing for the programs actually coincide with the faculty's research interests or other project interests, so that the students can be matched to the faculty. So they're going to be looking at the research or work experience that you have, how well they kind of interface with the program's goals and objectives. And then, of course, there's going to be an English assessment component if, in fact, your English is not your primary language. So when you think about the departmental process, make sure that you're familiar with the department itself, because different departments may have different parts of the application that are going to ask for additional information. So make sure that when you're looking at different schools and different departments, that you pay particular attention to the direction that they give you in their application. Another very important thing to consider are these external factors. So the likelihood of admissions, depending on many factors, is a part of the game. And oftentimes, again, external factors can include the program goals itself, but also will include the application pool. So one year, department may get a banner pool of applicants. Another year, they may not get the pool that they necessarily want. So they're going to be making choices depending upon the pool that they see themselves. And then again, funding availability, as I mentioned before. Faculty mentors are going to be key. In some cases, some departments assign applicants directly to a faculty member. In other cases, faculty themselves are more involved in choosing who it is that they would like to work with them. So again, they're going to speak up for students that they're familiar with, and they're more likely to try to recruit those students into their programs or into their labs. Faculty are also very interested in graduate students that can assist them both in their research or their teaching efforts. So again, that connection with the faculty, that familiarity with the faculty is really going to be quite important. So what you want to do is you want to present yourself as a whole package. You want to think about branding yourself. So think about a job application. How are you going to present yourself so that you show that you are the best fit for that particular program? So by branding yourself, think about how you want to convey yourself. Are you motivated to be successful? Are you willing to make contributions? Do you work well with other people? You want to think about how you want to convey why it is that they should choose you. So your application should showcase your educational trajectory. It should highlight your talents and special characteristics. If you have certain accomplishments that you want to convey, whether it's a paper, a presentation you made, or an award that you actually received, those are the things you want to highlight. You want to come up being mature, responsible, and professional. You also want to display the fact that you have certain interpersonal skills that are also going to make you more successful. And these can be a variety of things. It can be demonstrating resilience or overcoming challenges. When it comes to the fit, you want to show that you have a passion for that field. You want to convince them that you really you've thought about where you want to be, what you want to become, and how that program actually provides you with those opportunities. But you also want to set yourself apart from others. When you, again, think about a large application pool, what is going to attract those reviewers to you as opposed to someone else? So you have to convince the admissions committee why they should choose you. And so how you present yourself ideally will be confirmed and validated by the letters of recommendation that are written on your behalf. So what are the elements of a strong application? And here's where we have to be fairly thoughtful. We have the material that you submit or that is submitted on your behalf, the evidence, for example, the components. Here, we include the transcripts and the GPA, the GRE scores, the personal statement, statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, a resume or research experience if you acquired some, and then the interviews. And each one of those components is going to provide a snapshot into the various skills and talent and experience that you have. So when we think about the cognitive skills and academic background, these are going to be gleaned primarily from the transcripts and the GRE scores. The undergraduate transcript is also going to convey some information about your interest and passion. This is by looking at the courses that you've taken, the majors or minors that you have acquired in your program. And all of these are going to map onto fit with the program and mission goals. When we think about personal attributes, these are the things that are going to characterize you and your motivations and other factors. These are going to be gleaned from the personal statement and the statement of purpose, the things that you're writing and telling about you and your perspective and who it is that you are. But ideally, it's going to be corroborated by the letters of recommendation. If you say that you are of a certain personality type or a certain ambition, ideally, you're going to have letter writers that are going to be confirming the fact that they have the same impression view that you have of yourself. So think about what each of these components is going to provide in terms of that snapshot. And ideal is going to provide information that shows that you are well-rounded, ambitious, motivated, and can work well with other people. Excuse me. In terms of academic preparation, then, the transcripts are going to be key in this particular case. So you want to make sure that you send them in early. You want to follow up and make sure that they arrive. The transcripts are going to provide some very important information for the reviewers. One of them is that it's going to reflect your program of study. How does it relate to the graduate programs you're applying to? Are the courses in mesh with what the program is at the graduate level? The transcripts are also going to demonstrate depth. It's going to show a progression of courses you've taken at the introductory foundational level, and it's going to show progression to more advanced courses. It's also going to provide information about breadth, that is, identifying courses that you've taken in related fields and also courses in general education. So we're looking for individuals who can be specialized, but are also well-rounded and can contribute in other ways to the program dynamic. The personal attributes are also key, and this is going to be part of your application for your demonstrating desirable attributes that include the ability to work with others, your leadership skills, your engagement in various components of the program, your commitment. So you want to be able to be thinking about, again, this notion that you are the best choice for those programs and that you have the motivation and the personal attributes that are going to help you to be successful. Now, in terms of the application itself, a lot of this personal attribute information is going to be coming from things that you write about in your personal statement and statement of purpose that are going to reflect co-curricular or extracurricular activities. So in terms of the co-curricular activities, here is where you're probably going to be thinking about research experience that you've acquired or internships that you've actually been involved in. And these are important because it's going to demonstrate that you have an interest in that field, you're identifying your passions for that field. Ideally, if you're working on a research program or a writing project, you start developing the analytic and critical thinking and writing skills that are part of that particular profession. And ideal is also going to give you the opportunity to start organizing and presenting data or information, which is what typically happens. So you want to be able to start the rudimentary steps that you would be taking if you were doing that as a profession. So you want to gain that relevant experience that is related in some way to the career or degree objectives that you're pursuing. Now, let's suppose that you don't have time to engage in research. Let's say that you are a working student. Maybe you have obligations at home that are keeping you away from getting involved in research. Possibly the case that you have long commutes and you don't have time to meet with faculty during office hours. So if you happen to be a working student, think about things in that work environment that you could write to describe leadership capabilities or working as a team member or demonstrating problem solving or cognitive skills, communication skills. So even though you may not be involved in research, there are still ways of crafting your statements that give them a sense that you have the skills and the talents that make up what makes up a good graduate student. The extracurricular activities include things that we do outside of the typical academic arena. These are the volunteer community services that you might be involved in. You might be an athlete, you might be involved in sports, whether it's intramural or one of the major sports, individual or teamwork. Here again, you're showing that you can work with people or that you have leadership skills. There may be other professional activities you're involved in, or student group activities. Tutoring would be another one that you might want to talk about. If you're in the healthcare professions, you might be working or working as an intern in a hospital or a healthcare institution. You might be more involved in things that are related to your community and your church or your synagogue. So you could talk about things that you're involved in there. There are also others that are involved working with issues that have to do with inclusivity and diversity. And so these are also part of the things you should be thinking about in highlighting your extracurricular activities. So why is it important to demonstrate leadership and engagement? One of the things that is key is the graduate school, again, is different from undergraduate school. And at this point, you are becoming a leader. So you want to show that you have the maturity for the program. You also want to show persistence. You want to show that you can look at a problem, and even though there may be certain obstacles, that you are going to continue to look for alternative ways to answer the problem or solve the issue. Patience is really key for graduate school. Patience is one thing that is key because oftentimes you may be involved in a project or involved in an experiment and it doesn't work and you have to go back to the drawing board. So rather than just dumping the project, you want to think about new angles of looking at it. Graduate school is a time where there is a delay of gratification. That is, you're making short-term sacrifices, hopefully for long-term gain. So you are going to be thinking about how you want to create an environment that demonstrates your leadership and engagement skills. And part of this is also by looking at things that are necessary to get to that point. And that includes time management skills, the ability to prioritize. So the message here is you want to show that you can do things in a sustained manner rather than dabbling in a lot of different things, which is a little different from getting into undergraduate school. The other thing you might want to do is give a comprehensive view and consideration of the GRE test. Find out if the department or the program requires a GRE general test or a subject test. If not, consider whether or not the general test or the subject test can boost your application. You don't want to provide less information than other applicants are providing. And so one of the things that I mentioned to faculty is rather than using the GRE test as an admissions tool, think about it as a tool where you can assess the strengths and weaknesses of a student so that if there are in fact certain weaknesses that are identified, you can actually use those to help craft either tutorials or other things to help the student be more successful. So you want to familiarize yourself with the general test. It's intended to measure verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, critical thinking, and analytic writing skills. And these are really important to be successful in graduate programs. The GRE test is really a test of readiness for graduate studies. It's not an intelligence test. A lot of people misunderstand that. Again, if you're working in college and you don't have time for research or have little time or contact with faculty, then the GRE score may actually be the tipping point to get you considered for a program. Again, there may be consideration of costs involved. So there are some links here that provide you with either free or low-cost test preps for the GRE. And so take a look at that and see whether or not that's something you might want to consider if you haven't already. So let's move on to the letters of recommendation. And one of the things that I wanted to mention right up front is that the letters of recommendation are going to tap into things that you have talked about in your statement of purpose and personal statement. So they're going to be tapping into your personal attributes, and ideally they're going to address things like your passion for the field or your fit with the program. You want to make sure that you start the process of identifying your letter writers very early on. And early on can be as early as being a freshman. You don't want to wait till the last minute. I've had students that have come to me that took an introductory psych or psychobio course when they were freshmen or sophomores. They come to me 3 years later and they ask me for a letter of recommendation. And it's hard because I may not remember that. So I won't refuse to write a letter, but it's kind of harder to write a letter for someone that you don't know well, apart from the fact that they did well in your class. So you want to ask the recommender if they have, first of all, the time to write a letter, but to write a strong letter recommendation. If they can't write a strong letter recommendation, you may want to think about somebody else or get to know them well enough so that they feel confident they can. So you want to be fairly specific. Provide them with a copy of the information you're submitting in your application. For example, a personal statement or a resume. I often ask students to give me a copy of their transcript. And sometimes they are reluctant to do that because maybe they had a period where they didn't do so well. Well, that's good for me because I can ask them. And so what happened, third quarter of your junior year, and there may have been personal issues or other issues that are unrelated to their ability to perform well, but other things that get in the way, including life. So transcripts are good. Give them plenty of time, at least 2 weeks more if possible. And because other students are also going to be asking those same faculty for letters of recommendation. So you want to give them plenty of time. You want to secure letters from faculty in your major. So you're going to want to ask for letters from your professors, your supervisors, who you know and that know your work pretty well. So once you ask them for a letter, if there isn't a way to check, send them a reminder, but also make sure that you thank them for the effort that they're providing on your behalf. So who should you ask for a letter recommendation from? Should it only be from professors that you received an A in their class? Or is it better to get a letter from a distinguished professor as opposed to someone who is a starting professor? In some cases, some of the faculty members are teaching large classes and don't get to know the students very well. Then the student might get to know the TAs well, the TAs know the students. And so oftentimes students will ask me, well, is it okay to get a letter from a teaching assistant? And I usually encourage them to try to get at least a letter from a faculty member that knows them pretty well. All the other letters can be supplementary. And in some cases, certain faculty members will actually have the TA write the letter, and then they will co-sign the letter that is predominantly drafted by the teaching assistant. So there are different ways of doing it. The thing is, you want to get students that, letters from individuals who know you well, even though you may not have gotten an A in that class. I had one student who, this was a psychobiology class I teach on stress and disease, and it's a smaller class, so I get to know all the students pretty well. And there was this one female who was having a hard time. She was struggling with the class, and she would try to come to my office hours, but she was having issues at home. She was having family issues and work obligations, so it was very hard for her to stay on track, but she was trying her best, and she was trying to do everything she could to be successful. So at the end of the year, she got a C in the class, but I told her, I said, if you ever are thinking about graduate school, come to me and I will write a strong letter of recommendation for you because you have got the grit and the spirit and the motivation to do well. You just have other things that are kind of impeding that progress and getting in the way. So think about how well that individual knows you. You may have been out of school for a while. So this is another issue with returning students. And so again, you want to be thinking about fostering a relationship with some faculty members, or think about those that you fostered a relationship so that you come back and ask them for a letter down the road. Let's move on now to the statement of purpose and the personal statement, and we'll start with the statement of purpose first. So the statement of purpose is really there to help the selection committee understand your academic interests and to evaluate your fit for the proposed program of study. So in the statement of your purpose, you're going to explain why you've chosen that field and what the relevant academic, research, or professional experiences you have that make you a strong candidate for that program. You want to be talking about why it is that you want to get into that area and what makes you a good student for it. So you want to include information that demonstrates subject matter, subject knowledge, general skills that you've acquired along the way that would give you a kind of a foot in the door into that particular profession. Now, the personal statement is going to provide additional information to the selection committee that may be outside what you said that in the statement of purpose. Here's where you're probably going to be talking about the personal attributes in greater depth. So you may want to describe how your unique character experiences will enable you to contribute positively and effectively, not only to the department, but also to the academic field. Here in the personal statement, there's usually the opportunity to explain challenges or barriers that you have faced in pursuing higher education and how you overcame those challenges. One thing in today's age is artificial intelligence, and faculty and admissions directors are very interested in authenticity and originality. So you want to be cautious about whether you're going to be using an AI tool like ChatGPT. You really want to make sure that you're providing an authentic document that faculty can feel confident that this is your statement and then not some artificial statement that's been created by artificial intelligence. So let's take a look at the personal statement first, and as my colleague Terry Ackerman says, excuse me, the personal statement is just that. It's personal. It should be specific to you, your goals, your experience, your personal attributes. So the purpose of the personal statement is to give the applicant the opportunity to showcase their passions, their personality, and their potential. And the benefits here is that it puts a face to the more objective quantitative credentials. It really personalizes you as an individual. So here you can reflect on your own unique experiences, your background, your points of view. In some cases, some departments are providing prompts, excuse me, prompts that direct you to what it is that they want to know about you. And so at UCLA, there's a series of prompts I've just presented two here as examples of what they want to know about you in the personal statement. So the first prompt is, are there educational, personal, cultural, economic, or social experiences not described in your statement of purpose that have shaped your academic journey? If so, how? Have any of these experiences provided unique perspectives that you would contribute to your program, field, or profession? So here's a second prompt. Describe challenges or barriers that you have faced in pursuit of higher education. What motivated you to persist, and how did you overcome them? What is the evidence for your persistence, progress, for success? So hopefully there are prompts in the application that are going to direct you to what it is that they want to know about you more clearly. Another very important thing is the departments and programs are more serious about diversity and inclusion. We know that diversity of thought and experiences, that is bringing people together with these different perspectives, generates greater creativity, greater productivity, greater innovation. There are studies that have demonstrated this time and time again, but it also promotes social justice and equity. So you want to be thinking about the opportunity, probably in the personal statement, to talk about this diversity imperative, to articulate your understanding of what that dimension means. So you may want to identify ways in which you have engaged in service efforts or programs to increase the participation of groups historically underrepresented in higher education. You may show that you understand the broad continuum of diversity, which includes the overrepresentation of members of some groups in higher education and the underrepresentation of other groups, for example, women or students of color or students with disabilities. Part of that statement may be more personal, so you may want to highlight experiences that show that you have the drive and the motivation to persist and succeed in spite of barriers. And then finally, there may be certain research areas that are non-traditional to looking at diversity, that help to understand the experiences of individuals and groups underrepresented in higher education. So when I think about this, I think about the whole study of health disparities and the fact that we can look at health as a universal construct, but we can also look at health disparities in terms of how certain life conditions or environmental conditions impact health in Black communities or Native American communities. and how understanding those dimensions really have an overall beneficial effect for the population as a whole. So you want to be thinking about that in a serious kind of way. Now, the statement of purpose, again, this is where you want to tell the programs why it is that you want to get into that program and why you're the best applicant for that particular program. So, excuse me, when a faculty are looking at the statements of purpose, they're looking at how well you qualify for that program and how well there is a fit for you in that program. So you want to be very clear in terms of following the guidelines that are provided to you. You want to write the statement and write it in a fashion that is convincing and strong. You may want to set it aside and go back and see what you've written and rewrite it. Take it to others to evaluate. Take it to a writing center or let a faculty member you know critique it. So you want to accent the positive, and if there are things that have impeded your progress, certain negative situations, you may want to briefly highlight them, but you don't want to dwell on them. In other words, if there are negative things that have impacted your progress, what did you learn from that? Part of it is showing that you are adaptable and that you have flexibility to make adjustments if things go wrong. So here is where you are going to make statements about who you are and why it is that you are one of the qualified individuals for the program. So in the statement of purpose, you want to demonstrate familiarity with the graduate program and with the university. You want to make sure that you're providing a consistent, coherent set of ideas. You want to have a solid beginning. You want to have a strong beginning. You want to have a middle and an end that really kind of rounds out why it is that you are the best individual for that program. You want to write it in a positive and mature fashion. And if there's anything unusual in your academic journey, there are blips and hiatuses. You might want to talk about those briefly, but keep focus on what it is that you want to do and why it is that you want to get to that program. The expectations are going to vary. So depending on whether you're in a STEM field or humanities field, if you're looking at an academic degree versus a professional degree, you want to pay attention to the information that they are asking you to provide, and you want to think about writing it in a very sophisticated, mature way. So the statement of purpose is going to demonstrate your familiarity with the program, and this is where you want to be thinking about why do you want to study in that institution or that department? Why are you applying to that particular program? What have you done that makes you a good fit to that program? And so you want to be specific to the program and the institution. So here's an example of an opening statement from a student. I'm interested in your program because many of the faculty members at your university are conducting research in areas of my methodology, theoretical, and geographic interests. For example, Dr. A has conducted research with coastal populations of the Pacific, including the Chumash. So again, very direct. This may be a student that is looking for a program in cultural anthropology, or maybe geography, or sociology, or political science, but you really get a sense that that student pretty much knows what they want to do. You want to avoid simplicities and generalizations in your statement. You want to avoid things like, I want to go to grad school because I love to read, or I love to learn new things. You want to be fairly direct in terms of what you do without having these trite statements that really do not add anything to the information that you're providing. You want to demonstrate depth of experience and what you hope to pursue. So in this particular case, there are some examples that are provided by individuals who tell them why they want to do what they want to do. So the first, I have nurtured a sustained interest in wanting to know the details of life. That could be a student that is interested in applying to a biology program or a developmental psych program, but it really kind of captures your attention. Another one, mathematics, the language of the universe, has enthralled me since I was first introduced to algebra in the 6th grade. Another one, I know college was definitely going to be a challenging experience. Fortunately, the support I received from my family empowered me to pursue my goals. I decided to trust my talents and embark on the journey of college. Although I have my ups and downs, my determination and desire to succeed has helped me persevere. So again, you want to write something that is going to be captivating. That captivating first sentence can come by honing it so that you pretty much know what it is that that program is offering and how you kind of blend into it. So here's, I'll just read the first two sentences that again are kind of hopefully capture the reader and want them to read more. So in college, I learned that mechatronics not only can entertain millions of people, but can also help improve the quality of life of those with disabilities. Another one, I wish to apply numerical methods to better understand the problems we face with energy, climate change, and natural disasters. So someone in a mathematical or computational field may be thinking about the mechanics of using those methods, but also thinking about the broader picture of how it impacts society or the environment in one way or the other. I think you get the idea. So you want to convince them why they should offer you a position in the graduate program. You want to highlight what makes you different from everybody else in that pool. You want to make sure that your interests match the faculty's research interests. So you want to make sure that you familiarize yourself with the department. Think about identifying one or two, maybe three faculty members that you would like to work with. And in your application, mention them by name. I know that when I was looking at applicants for our own grad programs, if they mentioned my name, I was more likely to be engaged in looking at their application more seriously, especially if I had openings in my lab for new students. So make sure that those particular faculty that you're mentioning are still in the department and at an institution. So faculty do leave, faculty do retire. And of all things, don't mention the faculty. Maybe you've just submitted an application to Stanford and have mentioned some Stanford faculty members in that letter, and then don't change the statement and apply to another school like UCLA and mention those names of individuals who are not in our program. So again, make sure that you are focused on detail, making sure that you're looking at the information for that particular department. You want to express your interests and think about the topic, but also think about the fact that you should be open to other areas within that domain, because there may be a faculty member you want to work with and not necessarily considering that there may be another faculty working in an allied field that is looking for students. And so you want to be specific, but open up to other ideas. So here's an example. I wish to pursue a PhD in biomedical engineering with an emphasis on mechanical devices to initiate a patient-centered design focused in the field of medical device design and development. By designing with the patient in mind, I can develop customized medical products for a wide variety of users, patients with special needs, clinics in developing countries, or average everyday users. So you know what you want to do, but you're also flexible and can consider other parts of that particular field that you would also get interested in. You want to demonstrate that you understand the methods or the methodologies used in that field, whether they're quantitative or qualitative, whether they're narrative. So if you have had some research experience, document the skills that you've acquired. Maybe they are laboratory techniques or methods of statistical analysis or survey methodology. So you want to highlight what it is that you can provide in terms of assistance to the kind of research that you'll be doing. And then finally, as you consider the statement of purpose, you also want to personalize it, but not too personal. In other words, you don't have to divulge your full life story. After all, you want to convince them that you are focused on getting into a field that you have a passion for. So you want to discuss the relevant academic, employment, or volunteer experiences that you have that are kind of related to that field. You want to show that your preparation is pretty much in depth. And you also want to show these interpersonal skills, show that you are respectful and that you're coachable. If you have certain strengths, identify them, but don't pretend to be an expert in something that you're not. Show that you are willing to be taught by the faculty and learn from the faculty and individuals within that lab. Maybe it's postdocs. You want to be able to demonstrate that you can take feedback from peers as well as faculty, and you also can accept constructive criticism and be a good listener. So you want to show that you are focused, but also are a team member and are willing to work hard in a way that is respectful and coachable. Another thing, as you're writing, if you cite certain studies in, for example, the statement of purpose, make sure not to plagiarize. In describing your personal element to your personal statement, think about talking or ending with what are your career trajectories? What do you want to do after you graduate from graduate school? How are you going to utilize your degree? And so here you want to say something about whether you want to go into academia or research and development, whether you want to go into nonprofits. So you want to talk about how that degree is going to help you achieve that goal. Another very important thing is make sure that you have others proofread your information. You don't want to be sloppy. And again, we have all kinds of tools these days, spell checkers, one thing or the other, to make sure that we are writing documents that are legible, that have a good flow, and that are correct. All right. So now let's move on to the interview, another key component of the application process. And here are some statements from faculty about wanting to get to know the applicant in a way that goes beyond the typical element. Here's a statement. If I'm going to spend over $160,000 and the next 5 or 6 years with this person, you can be sure that I'm going to want to interview this person. When they leave, I want to know their favorite ice cream, what their biggest fear is, what makes them get up in the morning and work late at night. So this is now the time to really talk about things that are separate from the application, but help to amplify or highlight the positive, or to query about things that might be left unknown in terms of challenges that the individual might have faced. The purpose of the interview is fourfold. One of them is, of course, to better understand you. It's also going to be a tool to recruit you into the program if they're interested in you. Ideally, they want to offer you admission into their program. And so it really facilitates you learning more about them as well as them learning more about you. So there are certain rules in the interview. One of them is that you want to size them up as much as they want to size you up. So you're interviewing the faculty and students in the same way that the faculty and students are interviewing you. Remember that you're always at the interview. So even though you may be meeting people at different times, they're always assessing you in one form or the other. So you want to be professional. You don't want to let your hair down too much, especially if you're interviewing with students. The important thing here is to relax, tell the truth, be yourself. And after all, faculty certainly are going to be comparing notes of the interview and seeing whether or not there's a consistency in terms of excuse me, what you told each one of those individuals interviewing you. Who are going to be the interviewers? Well, there could be a variety of different people. Certainly could be faculty in a particular lab that you're interested in. It could be faculty in the graduate program that make a part of the admissions committee. It could be current graduate students and graduate students in particular labs. And this is a good time to ask them about their experiences in the program. Are they satisfied with the program? Are they getting the kind of mentoring that they feel that is sufficient for them to succeed? In other cases, there may be other university or departmental individuals that are part of the review process, and some departments will actually have alumni, people who've gone through the program, be part of the interview team. Excuse me. So before the interview, certainly you want to familiarize yourself with the department and the school and the community. You want to go to their website, extract as much information as you possibly can. You might want to make a list of questions that you would like to ask, but also ask if they have questions that they might be asking you that they'd be willing to divulge. Ask for a list of individuals who you're going to be meeting with. If you're, going to be doing an in-person interview, think about asking for what would be appropriate to wear to the interview, and then email any contact in the program to get more information about what it is that you might want to do to prepare for that interview. During the interview, you want to see the lab, you want to see the classroom space, you want to see the community as best you can. Certainly, you can do virtual tours online, or ideally, if you had a chance to visit the department and the campuses, that would also be very helpful. During the interview, you want to be cheerful, you want to smile, you want to speak clearly, you want to have a conversation with purpose. And here, it's very important to be inquisitive, to be curious, to be what we call bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You want to come off being genuinely interested in that program, in the department, in the university. You want to show that enthusiasm so that they themselves get enthusiastic about you. So be ready to listen, but also be ready to ask questions. Remember, this is a two-way street. You want to let them understand that you understand that the interview is mutual, as John Augusta mentions in the quote here. So you want to know whether or not it's going to be an in-person interview or a virtual interview or some hybrid form of either of the two. So once you've gone through the interview, you want to write thank you messages. You might want to ask for any feedback that they can provide to you. And you also want to follow up with any other additional information that was requested during the interview. They want to get more information about things that you experienced, or they may want to get some more information about individuals that you work with and so forth. So make sure that you follow up with any requests that they have of you. So we've gone through the entire process, and we've written our application, we've submitted it, we've had an interview, we're feeling good about things. And the next thing you need to be thinking about are the financial considerations. And here, again, it's going to be really quite different from undergraduate school, because there are going to be a variety of sources of funds available. Some of them may be through the university or the department, through fellowships or scholarships, or there may be opportunities to tap into federal agencies. For example, the National Science Foundation as an individual. Faculty have grants oftentimes that are supported by other federal institutions, and so there may be opportunities that they can fund you on their grants. The key thing here is that as a graduate student, and certainly in doctoral programs, there are going to be opportunities for fellowships, but also research assistantships and teaching assistantships, which also provide a salary for those that are teaching assistants. Think about multiple year packages. So if they start talking about funding, you might want to ask about whether or not the funding is for 1 year or 4 years. Ideally, they're going to give you a multi-year funding package. Also think about summer, because some of the fellowships and scholarships are providing funding for the academic year, but don't include the summer period. So many of the programs and institutions have summer research programs that departments can nominate their students to, or students can apply to. So you want to make sure that you don't leave any stones unturned. There is, of course, always the possibility of student loans, but think of this as the last resort, because loans have to be repaid and you have monthly payments and so forth. So you really want to try to extract as much information about funding opportunities, but also see what they can provide to you. Excuse me, the support that they provide can include anything from a stipend, which could be an annual stipend or a single one-time stipend. It can also include tuition payments, medical care coverage, expenses that include books, travel, or research, housing allowances. In most cases, if you get a teaching assistantship, this usually includes a salary and also a tuition remission or cancellation, and also health insurance. So there are various benefits, and many research assistantships also provide these kinds of additional aspects as well. So you want to make sure that you look at that. Additional considerations is that if they are going to be providing you with a fellowship or some other award, make sure that you get it in writing. Also, think about the unexpected. Sometimes things fall through, and so do you have a backup plan? Also note that awards are available at different times. So even though you may be kind of short on funding, continue to check with your financial aid office or your graduate division or graduate school, because awards have become available at different times throughout the year. Okay. Finally, we want to close the deal. And this is now where you're going to think about your priorities. You're going to want to make your checklist here. What are the most important things about the program that are going to attract me to making an acceptance of their offer? So you want to be thinking about the academic components. Are they going to be providing with the training and the experience that is going to help you be successful? Is the location important for you? Is the location in terms of the environment, the atmosphere? Is it a urban school or a school that is set out more in a more rural environment? What's important for you in terms of satisfying your own personal needs? You want to be thinking about mentoring, and this is really key. We talked about faculty having students, but we want to make sure that we align students with mentors who are going to be there to help them guide through the process academically, but also may help them in some kind of life coaching, helping them to get through periods where maybe they're questioning whether or not they want to stay in the program or not. So you want to have a good social support system. And so that support system can include not only the faculty and the staff, but can also include the graduate students that make up that program themselves. Oftentimes, having social support is even more important than some of these other factors. You want to be thinking about teaching opportunities, research opportunities. Financial is also very important. You may have different offers. They're offering you different levels of money, but think about the location and the cost of living. If it's a campus that's located in a big urban environment like New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta, cost of living is going to be higher. And so you want to be thinking about whether there's an adjustment for that factor as opposed to a smaller institution in a more rural setting where the offer of financial assistance is less, but proportionate to the expenses that you're going to have along the way. So now you're ready to close the deal. They've made you some offers. You're excited about getting into graduate school. Remember, the department is making you an offer and you're either accepting or declining that offer. In most cases, there's a limited time for you to respond to their offer. Typically, there's an April 15th deadline that most institutions and schools pretty much adhere to. So before you make that decision, make sure you get a letter of acceptance, make sure you get a letter outlining the financial support they're going to be offering you. If you haven't already done so, take a virtual or in-person campus tour. I'm assuming if you've done an interview, you've already done pretty much that. Think about the costs and the benefits of being at that particular institution or department. So you want to review your priorities. And if anything, talk to at least one mentor or a good friend about your decision and see if there's anything that you may not have considered that you should have been considering along the way. So now you're ready to close the deal. So now you've decided you're going to institution X and that particular department, and you're really feeling good about it. So you want to email your acceptance, mention in that acceptance any financial assistance that they have made an offer to you, thank the faculty, thank the staff, and then you want to be thinking about the process of moving, the physical move, the emotional move, leaving friends and family behind in some cases, but being ready to meet new people and get into a program that hopefully will launch you on to the next phase of your life. So after you've closed the deal, if you've had other graduate programs that have offered you admission, make sure that you email those programs and thank them for their offer, because you don't want to burn your bridges. It may be a point in time, maybe you get dissatisfied with the program you're in and you want to transfer, and so you want to maybe transfer into another program that has admitted you and that you would decline. Think about future jobs. Once you've gotten through the program, that other institution may have a job opening and you may want to apply for it. And you may have already made connections with certain individuals in that particular program or department. You may have even collaborated with them. So you want to be thinking about your future colleagues and the potential to bridge out once you've completed your program. So that concludes the presentation today. I hope that you've been able to at least gain some better understanding of the process and the information that's going to be providing. We do have time for questions, but before we do, I'm going to pass the floor over to Don to talk about the GRE test and an offer available to you.
Thank you, Carlos. And you can take a breather for a second. That was a lot of information. So we appreciate you so much. Let you catch your breath. So to thank you for attending today, Carlos had mentioned the GRE being can be recommended or required, but just a way to enhance your application packet. So we wanted to give you an offer for those of you who are considering. If you're planning to take the GRE test, you can get $50 off the price of the test. You need to register for the test by December 14th, but you don't have to actually take the test until March 31st. So you have a little bit over a month in order to register, go in and make your free ETS account. And then you would need to select a date that is on or before March 31st. And you see the promo code there, the CF111-42350. So make sure you have this. Again, we're going to send the slide deck to Raquel so that you all can have this information. This is your time to get your questions answered. We would love to hear from you. While you're thinking of those wonderful questions, I do want to share one piece of information. Carlos had mentioned during the interview process that you may be interviewed by students, you may be interviewed by alumni. I do want to share one situation with you, and that is just be prepared that you're probably being interviewed even in an unofficial way. And what I mean by that is when I ran PA, PT, and OT programs for Indiana University, we would give our attendees who were there for the interviews their agenda. So there was a waiting room, and then they would know when their actual interview times were. And we had students in those rooms that would just talk to them about the program. But what they didn't know is the students that were also walking them back and forth between the interview rooms, the students that were supplying them snacks and things like that, they were also interviewing them, but in an unofficial capacity. So when the students were complaining about, oh, I can't believe I have to wait, I can't believe the questions they asked me, this room doesn't look very nice, I don't know if I want to go to school here. Any of those comments that they would make did get back to the admissions committee. So once you show up on campus, even if it's an unofficial capacity, you're being monitored, you're being evaluated, not only just on your personal attributes, but just your attitude, your patience. Did you go through the process? Were you respectable to everyone there? So keep that in mind that you may be unofficially interviewed as well. I don't see any questions in the chat, but Carlos, I'm going to ask you a question that we receive a lot. So this could be more tailored toward letters of recommendation. And one of the questions we receive from students a lot is, what is the most appropriate or best way to contact a professor if you've emailed them once or twice, but you're maybe still not hearing back from them about getting that letter of recommendation completed for you?
That's a great question. By the way, I wanted to thank you for the extra advice on the interview, because you are always on the interview, even though it's not in the formal process of the interview. People are always listening to what you're saying and the remarks that you're making, so that's great. In terms of faculty that aren't responsive, faculty get busy, and sometimes you have sent them an email and then they've received 20 other emails subsequent to that, and so your emails get kind of drifted down towards the bottom of the page or off the page altogether. So if you really are interested in getting a certain individual to write a letter for you and they're not responding, then find out when their office hours are being provided. Because faculty are supposed to attend their office hours, and that's a good time to check with them so you're not being intrusive, you're not knocking on their door at random periods of the day or night. You're there when they're supposed to be there, and you can ask them whether or not they received your request for a letter or a request for a meeting, and open a conversation. If it's a faculty member you know pretty well, they're probably going to be very apologetic and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. If it's a faculty member that you don't know that well, then that's a good time to get to know them. And you may not go in there with any subject matter question, but ask them about themselves, how they got involved in research, why did they decide to choose academia. Faculty love to talk about themselves and talk about their research. So you don't have to worry about anything directly in mind in terms of a course or course material, unless there's something you want to ask, but ask them tell them that you're interested in getting into that particular profession, and how did they get into it. That's usually the icebreaker, and that then opens up the opportunity to come back another office hour, and hopefully they get to know you and they're going to be more responsive.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. We do have a question in the chat, and it's about summer research experience. So if there are students who really want to be involved in like a summer research experience, what are some strategies that you can propose to help them find those opportunities?
Yeah, that's great, because at UCLA we had a lot of different opportunities. We had a funding through our graduate division that provided summer research programs, but get involved in these student groups. For example, McNair's programs often provide summer research, or the Millennium Scholars. The universities themselves may also host summer research programs. So check with the graduate schools or the departments themselves, because they're often looking for students to get engaged in research. Some of them may be partnerships. For example, UCLA has a UCLA HBCU initiative, and it's really there for faculty to make contact with HBCU students to come to UCLA to spend 6 weeks to work on research, and they get funding for that. So you really want to keep your eyes open and look at a variety of resources. Look at the websites for those institutions, and look at summer, just type in summer undergraduate research, and things will probably pop up for opportunities you can engage in.
Absolutely. And I did post in the chat something that I found, honestly, about 6 months ago. I've been in higher ed for about 20 years, and I did not know this existed. But there is, through the National Science Foundation, the research experience for undergraduates.
Right.
And this is where other institutions bring students to their campus for a fully funded summer research experience. It's an immersive experience. It's in all kinds of different disciplines. It is a grant by the National Science Foundation. And schools who participate in this, they not only, the student has to pay for their way to that campus, but then they actually live on the campus that summer. They have a stipend. They work directly with faculty, and they're usually very small numbers, so anywhere from like 5 to 10. But I did post that in the chat, so you can go on there and look at the different programs of interest, and you can contact them directly. Like Carlos said, reaching out directly. In graduate school, unfortunately, no one's going to advocate for you like a guidance counselor may have done in an undergraduate degree or program. So you really have to sort of advocate for yourself and find those opportunities. That's a great way to get started. I do want to ask one more question, because we get this one a lot. It's about a gap year. So, Carlos, in your opinion, does taking a gap year after an undergraduate, after they complete their undergraduate degree, does it hurt their chances of getting into graduate school later?
It shouldn't. It really depends on why you're taking the gap year. But it shouldn't, as long as you have all the other things that you've done. Sometimes students just need a break. And I know that in some cases, I had a lot of pre-meds in my classes, and many of them really took it seriously. They took prep courses for the MCATs. Some of them actually would graduate and take a gap year, but stay in my lab and help in the lab while they were studying for the MCATs. So they're kind of killing two birds with one stone. They're helping me out and helping them out by getting some research experience, but they're also preparing themselves for the MCAT to make sure that they do well. So you can do it for financial reasons. There shouldn't be any reason why the gap year, you should be penalized for that gap year. as long as everything else is fairly current. Now, what happens sometimes is students have not thought about getting letters of recommendation yet, so on and so forth, and they step away and then they go back, and that's where that relationship may not be quite as firm. So if you're going to take a gap, you'd be thinking about, getting all your ducks in a row beforehand and contacting faculty, say, I'm going to be asking for a letter of recommendation a year down, or down the road. I just want to make sure that you're still willing to write one for me, and things like that.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I would piggyback off that regarding the GRE as well. So
Yeah.
we have students that take a few years, 1 or 2 years off for whatever experiences, and then they want to go back and take something like the GRE. And it is a little bit more difficult only because you haven't used those skills in a while. So keep in mind, if you're considering graduate school, but maybe you want to take a year or two off, GRE scores are good for 5 years.
Yeah.
So what we see with our students is majority of them are taking them their senior year, and you don't have to submit your scores right away. They're good for 5 years. So if you decide to wait 2 years and then go to grad school, they're available. I will share that much like Carlos, graduate school is not necessarily on my horizon. I was a first generation undergraduate student. So the thought of more school was just not what I wanted to do. However, a year after I graduated, when I found myself still bagging groceries and still working in jobs that I was not finding a career in, I had my GRE scores to fall back on. I'm like, okay, let me get my life plan together. I may want to work a little bit more because I need money. And then I had those scores. So I did take the GRE my senior year, and that really helped me because it helped me to focus and give myself a timeline. Right. I've got these 4 or 5 years here now that if I want to work or try other things, I can. But when I'm ready to go to graduate school, the scores are ready for me.
Yeah.
We do have,
Good
we have
point.
another question in the chat about, this is a great question because this has actually changed over the years. The question is, how many programs should a student apply to? Should I apply to as many PhD programs I'm interested in, or find only a couple to focus on?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the resources, I mean, you may already know where you want to go. I mean, for myself, I did not know where I wanted to go. I applied to over a dozen different programs, and that can get pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And but part of my approach was that I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and that's where doing this kind of thing is really good, because at least you're thinking about it and thinking about grad school. I didn't do that, and it was a mistake on my part because I wasn't as focused as I could have been. And of course, I got rejected from most of those schools. So I was very disappointed. And in fact, I really was insulted by one institution that sent me back my entire graduate application to me personally with a letter of recommendation in them. So I thought, like, they don't want anything to do with me, including being in their files. But anyway, yeah, you have to pick and choose. If you're a really confident, strong student and you know that you're going to be highly competitive, then you want to be more selective. But if you're not quite sure, and you're not worried about getting into an Ivy League school, then I would say think about a range. Think about those that you feel pretty confident you're going to get into, those that are in the middle where you may or may not, and then shoot for the top of the couple, because you'd be surprised. You may think that your application is not that strong, but they're looking for a particular kind of student. So when I'd go to conferences like ABRCAMS or even SOCNUS, and I talk to students, and they would be intimidated by big schools like UCLA and others. And I say, well, tell me about yourself. And I say, my God, you ought to apply to our program. I can't guarantee you're going to get in, but you would be competitive. And so they kind of sell themselves short. But I would say, you can make a decision for yourself in terms of where your confidence range is, and then decide what schools that you would be happy with going to, and what you might want to think about twice. But I would say anywhere from at least half a dozen to more. It just depends on whether you can afford it.
I would agree. I would say that pre-pandemic, students were applying to maybe less schools. And now we are seeing that students are applying to even more schools because they are taking, like Carlos's advice, and they're doing a little more research. Thomas, for your question specifically, it's about PhD programs. Carlos, would you mind telling us the difference between like competitiveness between a PhD and a master's program, like how many students they apply and typically would accept or admit less?
Yeah, it really depends on the discipline itself. So some programs are for masters are fairly inclusive, take a lot more students. Some are online master's courses. PhDs are going to be more selective. They're going to usually take fewer students, and this is really where faculty making a long-term commitment with a student, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. If you're thinking about a PhD program but don't feel as though you're not quite ready for it, then I would say go for a master's. Masters are going to give you a good opportunity to show that you are graduate school ready. And that's going back to the GRE. GRE is going to give reviewers an idea that you are graduate school ready in terms of the quantitative and verbal reasoning skills. But if you already have a master's, you've already shown that you can do graduate level work. And so that's going to give you, in some cases, an advantage of applying to a PhD program. Not always, but in some cases, yes. So the short answer to your question is that yes, PhD program selections are usually more limited and more selective, but also they typically try to guarantee funding for that student. So they're only going to fund as many accept as many students as they can fund. With master's level, it's hit and miss as to whether or not they're going to give you any financial assistance. And so oftentimes masters are going to left up to the applicant to fund themselves and pay for the program.
Agree. Thank you, sir. Well, it looks like we have just a couple of moments left. I don't see any more questions in the chat. We'd like to take this time to thank you for this day. Raquel, thank you. The academic advancement programs at UCF, thank you as well. Dr. Grijalva, you're so wonderful. We just appreciate you and your expertise, and just you bring a sense of heart and soul to presentations like this. So we really appreciate it. Raquel, I'll turn it over to you if there were any final parting words of wisdom you would like to share with the group.
No, I think that was great. Thank you so much to our colleagues across the country. We so appreciate you coming in to speak to our UCF students. For students, I see already in the chat so many thank yous. Thank you so much. Students, we do have a few more grad school visits for the semester. So this is our last workshop, but tomorrow we are going to have MIT visit us virtually. So if you haven't signed up for that, and if you're interested, feel free to do that on our website. We also have MIT visiting in person at the end of the month. But besides that, have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, everyone. And again, thank you so much.
And I just wanted to mention, if anybody would like to contact either Don or myself offline, we're more than happy to engage with you and have a conversation. So thank you for attending. We really do appreciate your time.